The world doesn't reward honesty the way you were promised it would, and it doesn't punish softness the way you wish it would. And once a man notices that pattern clearly, without rage, without theatrics, just with a quiet, sober accuracy, something in him stops volunteering his life as proof that virtue alone guarantees safety. There's a way certain men move that isn't cynical, but it's also not naive, and it isn't loud, and it isn't trying to convince anyone of anything. Because they've already accepted a private truth most people spend their whole lives avoiding. The world is not designed to protect the well-intentioned. It is designed to reward what is effective, and effectiveness often looks like restraint, timing, and controlled disclosure, not constant transparency. The unnamed way begins the moment you recognize how early you were trained to become readable, to become agreeable, to become a stable, predictable shape that fits inside other people's expectations. Because predictability is convenient, and convenience is what systems prefer. And when you're convenient, you become manageable. And when you're manageable, your outcomes stop belonging to you in the way you thought they did. This is where the separation quietly forms, not between good and bad, but between those who live as open books and those who live as locked vaults with clean intentions and hard boundaries. Between those who believe morality requires full access to their inner world and those who understand that privacy is not deception, it is defense. And defense is what allows a man to keep his direction intact when the environment starts pulling at him. Most people never say it out loud, but they live as if the world is fair to the honest man. And then they keep getting surprised when the honest man becomes the easiest man to use. Because honesty without discipline becomes a leak. And leaks don't look dangerous until you notice how much strength has quietly drained out of you over the years. The mirror shows up in the simplest place: your own mouth, your own habits, your own reflex to explain, confess, reveal, justify, soften, make it easy for others to understand you. Because you were taught that being understood is the same as being respected. And it isn't, not consistently. Not in the real world. Not when stakes are present. Not when envy is present. Not when competition is present. Not when people are looking for leverage. This is why the first rule you were handed, always tell the truth, becomes complicated the moment you grow up. Because the world doesn't just contain friends, it contains incentives. And a man who reveals everything too early doesn't become noble. He becomes exposed, and exposure is not courage. Exposure is simply leaving the gate open and calling it virtue. A disciplined man doesn't lie as a lifestyle, because chaos creates noise, and noise creates mistakes, and mistakes create consequences, and that kind of man doesn't live for mess. What he does instead is simpler and colder and safer. He controls the timing of truth. He understands that information is currency, and currency is not spent impulsively. It is allocated, and when he speaks like he is spending something valuable, not like he is bleeding in public to prove he has a heart. That's the first shift. Truth becomes a blade, not a flood. And the blade is not swung wildly, because wild swings are emotional, and emotion makes a man predictable. And predictability is what puts you back in someone else's hands. The second rule you were taught, fit in, be normal, don't stand out, sounds like peace until you watch what it does to a man's spine. Because conformity is comfort, and comfort is often just obedience with better branding. And the cost of that comfort is always the same. You start living a life that looks acceptable to others and feels unfinished to you. It's strange how quickly people will praise you for being humble, when what they really mean is, don't make me feel small next to your ambition. Because the crowd doesn't fear your weakness, it's comfortable with your weakness. The crowd fears your independence because independence can't be controlled with approval. And once approval stops working on a man, the usual levers stop moving him. That's why men who don't require consensus are treated like threats before they're treated like examples. Because when you step outside the pattern, you force everyone still trapped inside it to fill their own cage. And most people would rather attack the man who reminds them than question what trapped them. So the man who is built for a hunter mentality doesn't chase being liked by the crowd, and he also doesn't obsess over being misunderstood, because both are forms of dependency, and dependency is expensive. He simply accepts that difference has a price, and that price is paid in silence, in solitude, in people talking about you without access to you, and he pays it because he values sovereignty more than applause. Then comes the third rule: be humble, don't show strength, which is one of the cleanest tricks ever sold to ambitious men, because humility can be a virtue, but it can also be a muzzle, and the world loves muzzled strength. The world loves strength that apologizes for existing because it keeps everyone else comfortable in their excuses. A disciplined man learns the difference between humility as composure and humility as self-erasure, because self-erasure isn't virtue, it's submission. And submission always invites predators, not because predators are everywhere, but because any environment will test what it can get away with. So he becomes modest in manner when it serves him, and he remains powerful in essence regardless, not to intimidate, not to perform, but because he knows the rules of human nature. People don't always respond to your intentions. They respond to your posture, to your standards, to the consequences they sense are attached to crossing you. And when you shrink yourself as a lifestyle, you train the world to treat you like a soft surface. This is where a Stoic backbone matters, because Stoicism isn't a costume, it's governance. It's the ability to hold your internal line even when the room tries to rewrite it. It's understanding that control begins inside, and that composure isn't politeness, it's command. The fourth rule, be nice to everyone, destroys more men than obvious vices, because niceness becomes an addiction when it is used to avoid tension. And a man who avoids tension avoids truth. And a man who avoids truth becomes easily steered by guilt, by social pressure, by other people's disappointment, by the fear of being the bad guy. There's a quiet difference between kindness and compliance, and you've seen it in real life even if you never named it. Kindness is chosen and clean and strong. It can say no without hatred. It can withdraw without drama. It can set a boundary without needing to punish. While compliance smiles while it's being drained, compliance forgives patterns and calls it maturity. Compliance keeps giving access to what keeps proving it doesn't deserve it. A hunter-minded man becomes selective without becoming cruel, and that is the mature form of strength, because unlimited warmth doesn't make you noble, it makes you available, and availability without standards is a bargain people take for granted. The fifth rule, be patient, your time will come, sounds wise until you notice how often it's used as sedation, because patience can be a weapon when it's active, when it is observation, preparation, timing. The calm of a man who is assembling leverage, but patience becomes poison when it is delay disguised as virtue, when it is fear dressed up as faith. The world is built by men who move while others wait to feel ready, and that doesn't mean reckless motion, it means decisive motion. It means the ability to act before the crowd names the moment. Because once the crowd names it, the door's already crowded, and crowded doors rarely favor late arrivals. This is where the hunter mentality becomes very simple. Wait with purpose, strike with precision, and never confuse stillness with surrender. Because surrender feels soft and respectable at first, but it always ends the same way, with another man holding what you hesitated to claim. The sixth rule, loyalty above all, has destroyed more self-respect than betrayal ever has, because blind loyalty isn't noble, it's a chain, and chains are usually placed on men who pride themselves on being good, because good men are easiest to guilt. Loyalty is powerful when it is mutual, when it is earned, when it is protected by reciprocity, but loyalty becomes slavery when it is demanded, when it requires you to abandon your own standards, when it asks you to stay aligned with something that is clearly misaligned with your future. A disciplined man doesn't betray easily, and he doesn't worship loyalty blindly either. He understands that devotion to principle is different than devotion to personality, and when someone tries to buy your obedience with the word loyalty, he hears what's underneath it. Don't leave, even if this hurts you, and he doesn't confuse endurance with virtue anymore. The seventh rule, chase happiness, might be the most elegant prison ever built, because happiness is a feeling, and feelings are weather, and weather changes, and a man who builds his life around chasing a mood will become a consumer of distractions, constantly hunting relief, constantly mistaking numbness for peace. Stoicism never promised constant happiness. It promised strength under reality, which is a different thing entirely, because reality includes discomfort, uncertainty, friction, and a man who cannot tolerate discomfort will be controlled by anyone who can manufacture it. Purpose, meaning, mastery, direction, those are heavier than happiness, they're less glamorous, but they create something you can stand on when the mood evaporates. And once a man learns to stop fearing discomfort, he becomes hard to manipulate, because discomfort is one of the main levers people use to steer weaker men. So what is all of this, really, if you strip away the dramatic packaging? If you remove the temptation to turn it into an edgy philosophy? It's defense. It's the recognition that your mind is a perimeter, your time is a resource, your attention is a weapon, and you don't hand weapons to strangers and call it kindness. You don't leave your perimeter open and call it honesty. You don't live for the crowd and call it humility. You don't tolerate disrespect and call it patience. You don't stay in misalignment and call it loyalty. You don't chase numb comfort and call it happiness. The hunter-minded man doesn't become a villain. He becomes unexploitable, and there's a quiet peace that comes from that, because peace is in a world with no threats. Peace is a man who knows how to protect his inner order even when threats exist. And once this clicks, something irreversible happens, because you start hearing the old rules the way you hear a familiar song whose lyrics you finally understand. And you can't go back to ignorance. You can't unnotice the way transparency becomes leverage for the wrong people. You can't unnotice how conformity turns men into echoes. You can't unnotice how false humility invites disrespect. You can't unnotice how unlimited niceness teaches the world you are safe to drain. You can't unnotice how passive patience steals years. You can't unnotice how blind loyalty changes your future. You can't unnotice how chasing happiness makes you controllable. That's the line. After that, you move differently, not louder, not meaner, just cleaner, with fewer explanations, fewer emotional leaks, fewer impulsive confessions, fewer negotiations with yourself. Because the first conquest is internal. The conquest of that reflex to overexpose, overgive, overstay, overexplain. If this hit in a way that felt uncomfortably accurate, comment, Hunter. Hit like if it feels like you, without the performance, without the costume. Subscribe if you want more of this calm, stoic, hunter-minded psychology, where self-command matters more than self-display. Once you see the rules for what they are, some paths close quietly behind you, and it gets hard to live the old way without feeling the cost.